What is up? Welcome to Wednesday Q&A Live. And hey, I want to introduce a friend I've got with me today who's going to help us answer some questions. So everybody welcome Elliot. Woo, woo, woo.
How's it going, guys? Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, man, thanks for being here. The goal today is to really just talk about all of the things that, people want to know. And by people, I mean questions that I either get, questions that people ask me or just randomly come across as we're talking to different worship leaders throughout the area. And just a quick heads up for anybody that wants to ask a question. We are going to have the live chat open. I can see those as you all jump in. So if you've got questions while we're talking, feel free to throw those in. If we have time, we'll answer them as best as we can. But first and foremost, Elliot, why don't you tell us a little about the church you serve at, what your role is, how long you've been there, and what else you have going on?
Yeah. So my name's Elliot. I'm here at Restoration Park Church. I'm what we call the music director here. And my partner is actually Abigail Berry. She is our worship coordinator. So in a lot of churches, we probably split the role of worship pastor, worship leader. And so my portion of the job is to manage most of the musical side. So I'm putting together music, ordering equipment. So I handle the budget there. And so music and vocals, all of that kind of stuff, that is kind of where I put most of my focus. And then Abigail focuses a little bit more on the worship side of what we do and the ministry side of what we do. And we still it overlaps quite a bit. So we both do it, but we both have our sides that we work on, and her office or her desk is right back there behind me, behind mine. So.
Very good. It'd be really awkward if we're having this conversation and she walks in. She knows we're live, right?
Yeah, she does. Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Perfect. It'd be better if she didn't know we were live, to be honest with you.
And she just comes in, right? Yeah, that would be great.
Exactly. Just to, keep it PG or better. It's fine.
Exactly. So I've been here. This will be going on 3 years now, and it's been great. We've been doing a lot of growth here. We're still fairly new church. I think in this location we've been here for about 5 years, coming from a smaller location in Medway, Ohio. And so now that we're here, we're kind of growing a lot and doing a lot more. We just recently are finishing up our final song in a series entitled Hymns. And so it's been an opportunity to write arrangements for hymns that everybody knows. And that's been a great challenge, and it's been a lot of fun for us.
Yeah, and I think I heard at least one of those. No, I think I listened to two of them because you've been kind of putting those on Facebook. But where can people find those? Because they're really good arrangements.
So right now I've been posting them on our YouTube page. And just as of today, I'm finalizing getting those available on Spotify under Restoration Park Worship as well. But if you go to the Restoration Park Church YouTube page, they're all there.
Yeah, awesome. Just for fun, because this will get into one of the questions we'll talk about a little bit later on. When you're taking a classic hymn and you're trying to rewrite it, what's the process? Where do you guys start, and kind of what's that creative process look like to get something recorded?
It's interesting. So one of the challenges that I put on myself was, one, I wanted to make it had to be accessible enough for a congregation. They needed to know. So one of the songs we did was It Is Well. And actually, let me use the other one. We did How Great Thou Art. And so we all know the hymn. It's pretty standard. And what do you do to keep that fresh and bring it into 2023 while still keeping it accessible for the congregation that knows it from the red hymnal or the blue hymnal that they've grown up with.
Yeah.
So most of it for us has been the structure of the actual song, and the melody of the song has not changed at all. So everything that everybody knows about the song will always be there. What we changed a bit more was like the intro and the interludes in between the verses and the choruses. So we had an opportunity there to kind of branch out a little bit more. So there's some drums, there's some guitar, and there's some things that you wouldn't normally expect from a hymn, at least not at this particular time. So I think that's what we did to kind of really help infuse some life into that song that wasn't there before.
Yeah, that's really cool because I think one of the things I hear a lot when we're talking about, redoing hymns, or that's kind of a hot topic, is like, how do we take something that is,
Yeah.
traditional, that people love, that there's a lot of nostalgia wrapped around, and how do we make it feel modern without changing so much that then people can't recognize it? Because, like, as musicians in the church, you're always balancing the desire for nostalgia, which is, one of the reasons, like, hey, I want to hear the hymn that I grew up with. I want to be able to recognize the melody. And I think you hit that really well. It's like keeping the melody the same, at least as best as you can, as much
Mhm.
as the meter allows, right? Becomes
Right.
such an
Yeah.
important thing. Cause like there's been some really cool hymn rearrangements I've heard, but I wouldn't have recognized them as the hymn itself. And like as a creative person, it's like, all right, I kind of like that because I want it to be creative and modern and fresh and new. But at the same time, if people, we could do the whole song and nobody would know it was actually a rearrangement of that hymn,
Mhm.
minus the lyrics. So, while admittedly lyrics are the important part of a hymn, probably, people are really nostalgic for the melody and the meter and the, even just the flow of,
Right.
and how those syllables lay. So like, man, I love what you guys are doing because I think everything I've listened to, you hit the nail on the head. You're keeping it very recognizable, but the instrumentation is very fresh.
I appreciate that. That was the biggest hope that we were walking out of that, was to be able to have people like, okay, I understand that. I recognize it. I know it is what it is, and I know it for the song that I love. And I was like, and appreciate the direction that we went without being a distraction to the message of the song and what everybody loves about it. So I
Yeah.
appreciate that, and hopefully we'll be able to do a lot more of that as we move forward.
Yeah, fantastic, fantastic. So that gets us into our first question, which is tied a lot to that. So our first question is this: so how do you balance at Restoration Park Church? How do you balance the desire for creativity and the culture you guys are building with the time commitments of both the people serving your ministry and your own time commitments as you have certain obligations that need to be finished every single week because Sunday is always coming. So how do you balance those two things, like workload versus creativity, and trying to build a creative culture in your team?
Uh, it's not easy. It really isn't. And it a lot of it comes from just first we throw out feelers. We in this particular these three songs that we were doing, the very first one where we reached out to some of our vocalists and some of our instrumentalists and said, hey, are you able to and do you have any interest in helping us put these songs together? And in this particular situation, you have to balance that out with work life, of course, as well, which for many of us, this is our job. Like, so I'm here at the church and Abigail's here at the church. We're here almost all throughout the week. And so to be able to do these things is a lot easier for us because we're always here. So that ends up being, her and I end up being kind of like the foundation of the process. And then we hope, like, as we try to grab people as they're available. In this particular, the very first song, we had a couple of vocalists that were able to come in and lend vocals to the song. And then as we went along, a couple other songs, we were able to have some instruments that were outside of just me doing instruments myself. But kind of moving into the kind of like, how do we keep it fresh? Uh, like I said, it's kind of a balancing act because we do want to continue to challenge ourselves in different ways, and it doesn't always happen because we have obligations for our normal Sunday services, and that will always take precedence over anything that we do, unless it actually serves that particular Sunday to do that. But usually, like, we start off with an idea and then we kind of just pitch it out, throw it out there, and see. And so, in even though, like, most of these songs, they were instruments and things that I did or Abigail sang, um, a lot of the idea and the structure of the song came from like, like, kind of brainstorming with our instrumentalists and saying, hey, what would you do if you had the ability to play in this particular part? So then they were able to kind of just shoot me over a text with a little audio clip of playing the bass guitar in that section, so I could be like, oh, okay, so I'll look at that and I'll do it that way, and that sounds really cool. So even though I did the instruments. A lot of the ideas came from our musicians, even though they weren't physically playing on those songs.
Yeah, and I love that because, the advent of technology allows us to be able to, shoot those little audio memos back and forth with one another, and, that's fantastic, man. I like that you are getting the whole team's involvement on it because that's probably one of the biggest challenges is like, for you, if I'm looking at you, I'm asking the question, from your perspective, okay, how do I do this to where I'm not doing all of it and then
Yeah.
just throwing it out to my team and saying, here's my idea, and I already recorded it because you guys weren't here, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I've been in that situation. It's like, man, I would have loved to have done this. I would have loved to play drums on that, or I'd love to play keys on that. But I understand I'm not available. Still a little disheartening because you don't feel like you're really a part of something. But so yeah, that was the best way that I was able to do that, was say, hey, like, let's get your input in the song, even if you can't physically play on it. So that and we're gonna continue to work on trying to find ways to be able to record in ways that will allow people to come in and just lay down tracks and then go about their day.
Yeah, I love that. And let me launch this into a little bit broader conversation on leadership in general, because this is a leadership concept, right? How do you, as one of the cultural leaders and the leader of that ministry, pull yourself out of it to a certain extent? Because leadership is all about sacrifice, right? That's one of the things that I'm really trying to teach here at Kingdom Calibrate is this idea of like servant leadership and taking the ego out of it, and really figuring out how you can take other members on your team and make them the hero of everything that the church does. Because, at the end of the day, it's our job as leaders to manage it, but the people that actually run the church are the people in those ministry positions, right? There's just as much of a level of ownership there. So the question is like, man, how can I constantly uh, prop up the other people on my team and make sure that even if I'm doing all the work, they're getting all the credit for that, right? And I love that, and that's a great piece of that, is like, man, you're getting input from them whether you would do it differently yourself or not. It's
Right.
about it being something that comes from Restoration Park Church overall and not just from Elliot's mind, right?
Right. Yeah. And I'll be honest, the very first thing was like, okay, it's easier for me to do this. Like I'm here, I'm just sitting, I've done my work, and I'm like, okay, well, I could, turn over here to my keyboard, and I'm like, okay, let me lay down all the things that I need to do. Abigail, come over here, run over here, grab a mic, let's record that real quick, and then go from that. And we could have probably have had everything that we needed done like that day. But that is the thing. I mean, if you really want it to be a team effort, then sometimes, unless if you're running against the clock on certain things, and that, I understand there's some exceptions and some, things, concessions that have to be made. But for the most part, if it's like, okay, we have this idea for a song, I don't know when we're going to do it, but let's throw it out there. Let's try to get as much input in as possible, and then with the way, if you have the ability to record like we do here in our own church, that makes it so much easier because, our alto can come in and lay down her tracks whenever she gets it. I'm going to get done at work at 5. Okay, come in at 6 and I'll be here at the church. We can record your tracks and then go home. And then the next day, if your bass player is free or anything like that. So it does, that helps a
Yeah.
lot. So you're not having to worry about trying to schedule studio time and
Yep.
and work with everybody's schedule. That
Yeah, which
that
also
does get more difficult.
Yeah, which is also tremendously expensive too, right? Studio
Exactly.
time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So churches out there that are listening, a great place to invest resources if you are looking to build a creative culture is like it's much easier to build a very approachable music studio that's not like you used to have to do, where it's like you're throwing down, $400,000 worth of super fancy analog gear. You
Yeah.
can actually build it in a room with some soundproofing and a couple
Yeah.
interfaces and a good mic and a good computer, right?
Yeah. I mean, I would probably say altogether, like we've only spent like, I don't say only, it's still, in the church world, it's still, it's all, but anywhere near the amount of money that it used to cost. We've brought it down to a really manageable thing. And there's so many tutorials and stuff now that you can get online and figure out things like frequency ranges and using plugins and all the different things that'll help with that. High-end studios will spend tens of thousands of dollars on. You
Yeah.
can do for hundreds or thousands here.
Absolutely. Now, Nicole asked this in the chat. She said, do you have a songwriting team? If so, how do they audition as one would if they were joining the band, vocal, or tech team? So that's a good question for you guys. Do you guys have a separate songwriting team, or do you just do it across your whole worship team?
Across our whole worship team.
Okay.
We're not yet at a point where we're not churning out songs and like a Maverick City type thing. Most of it has been our pastor has an idea for a series, and he's like, it would be really nice. Like, is there any way we could maybe write a song that would match that? And so then we just kind of we start off with either I'll start off with a melody or something that kind of gets the ball rolling, and then we'll get some verses and some better understanding of what the particular series is going to be about, and then we kind of stem from there. I mean, a lot of the writing team will come probably from myself and Abigail, but we also have other members that contribute as well. That's just something we've just learned over time, that they would say, hey, what about this particular line, or maybe this particular melody or something like that, and so then we'd start to reach out and we start to build from that versus any kind of like real auditioning, or it's just all over time. As we work together, we get to learn each other's habits and ways of writing.
Yeah. Awesome. That's great information. And for any church listening, that's fantastic information just to start to approach what creativity can look like in the songwriting realm. And that's before we can get to creativity across the board with, multimedia and
Right.
all of the massive amounts of technology that are available to all of us nerds out there if you really want to spend your time doing that, which is
Right.
always too tempting to spend too much time doing that, right?
Mhm.
All right. So let's bridge into our second question. So this is the last thing we'll answer today. What is the strategy for introducing new songs to a congregation? And then the second part of it is, how do you tell if that song is a success and worth actually keeping it in the rotation? So talk me through a little bit about how you guys do that at Restoration Park Church.
So we have two different ways that we introduce songs. The one is most recently. So when I first started here, the band had been in the habit of doing kind of like an instrumental band jam before during our countdown, our 5-minute countdown. And so we just pick random songs, things that, that either fit the message, but maybe that people could sing along to instrumentally, and things like that they recognize and whatnot. And then, when we started introducing songs, we would, my partner and I, we have a whole list. We have a board back there. You could see a dry erase board, and it's a whole list of different songs. And
Yeah.
a lot of it would just come from like, hey, we happen to hear this on Air One, iHeartRadio, whatever, or Spotify when they release new songs every Friday and stuff like that. That's typically where I go first before I, like that's typically some pretty good songs, and you have to sit through a lot of what would be just regular just hits, regular CCM, and then got what would actually be appropriate for church. Then when we did that, we take the song, we put it in our rotation. And for us, we would usually do it a minimum of 4 times.
Okay. 4
And
times.
yeah, and we found at least, and it's going to be different for every church. Sometimes, like for us, sometimes that might be a little too much. For some might be able to do 2 or 3 and know for sure. But for us, we found that usually because we have members that come in and out, they may be here one week, they may not be here the next week, and another member might be there that week. So that way it covers everybody as they're coming in and out of our church on a Sunday. And so then we get through those first couple of services. We try our best to be aware of what's happening, but depending on your situation and how you're we put our lights down in our congregation, and you could barely see past the second row, and when we're on stage. And so sometimes it's hard, but you can also get a feel for you can also hear if they're singing. You can look around a little bit, understand. So we get feedback from our congregation. They can we have a online page on Facebook, and so when we throw out new songs, we always post a video of the particular song so that they can be familiar with the song before they even hear it on Sunday. So that kind of starts that, and then over time you get to hear back. You just listen for feedback on whether or not they liked it or not. Hopefully you notice whether or not they're singing to it.
Yeah.
Does it seem to actually work for them? Does it work with the message? Does it work with our journey that we're trying to take, depending on what the particular song is? Like, for example, we just did "I'm So Blessed"
Mhm.
by the group Cain.
Okay.
I wouldn't necessarily say it's a good worship song, but
Yeah.
man, everybody, we did it. We did it as a band jam, and everybody walked out of the service for the whole, like, that's all I've been hearing is people been posting things, and guys from our production have been like singing "I'm so blessed," and so it's catchy. It's stuff. It's been meaning something for them, and so those are the things you want to look for. So that brings me to the second part of how we introduce songs. Is we started introducing some songs like that maybe not wouldn't fit in our normal worship time. We throw it in as the band jam, and our vocalists will come out and sing it, and we'll have a little bit of fun with it, and just kind of, that'll be our countdown, as long as it fits in with the direction that we're going. If we're trying to have a little bit more lighthearted, energetic service, then songs like that work really well.
Yeah. Now, where do you do the band jam? Is that like your intro into service or your outro out of service?
Intro, like our five, yeah, and we also, when we also outro as a band jam as well, but usually that'll be like just the band itself and not
Sure.
vocals and things like that. But then yeah, like we did Yahweh by Lakewood Music. I think it's Lakewood Church or something, and the worship team has been we've been loving that song a lot, and it's been really connecting with us well. Our pastors asked us after 2 weeks of doing it not to ever do it again. Not so much, but it just was not connecting with our congregation, and they noticed it. So we get feedback from them as well, and we ask for that feedback because that's sometimes they have a better pulse on the actual congregation than where we are sometimes.
Yeah, and that's a huge point. That's a huge point. I just want to stop there for a second because uh, to have somebody out there that you trust who can be objective enough. I'll talk to, our pastor, Pastor Dave or Tony or somebody like that and say, hey, let me know, is this working or is this not working? What are you guys hearing from out there?
Mhm.
And sometimes it's just talking about, hey, what's the mix like out there? Like, sometimes we'll just run stuff too hot and we need to come back and figure that out. But like having people out there who you can actually ask and say, "Hey, tell me how this is translating," because somebody in the congregation has a much different perspective than any of us do on the platform for a variety of reasons, right? It could
Right.
be because we have in ears in, can't hear a whole lot. It
Mhm.
could be because the lights are down, like you said, and it's hard to actually see if people's body language is actually emoting with the song well, or if there's any kind of posture of worship going on there. So having people out there that you can trust is huge, and it's also a humbling experience, right? Because you
Yeah.
have to be able to say like, "Hey, tell me the truth. Whether I'm going to like it or not, just let me know. Is this too much? Did this work? Did this connect?" And then having the wherewithal to say, "Okay, people are saying it's not working. I've heard that 3 different times. Maybe we need to change course." And that's part of this, leading without ego, leading with a humble attitude
Mhm.
where, if what we're doing is not serving the church well, then it's not about my taste, it's not about my desires. It's about what is going to push the church culture forward little bits at a time.
Exactly. Right, exactly. And that, like I said, for us as the worship team, every time we played Yahweh, it really it connected with us in a way that we could really take that journey forward. But it's a new song for our congregation. Typically, as band members or even as a leader, I mean, we're hearing these songs 10, 15 times or more before we ever introduce them into the church. So
Yes.
we're really familiar with it, and so it's gonna hold a different a place for us than our congregation, and sometimes those songs, I if I never play Glorious Day again, I would not, you know,
Oh,
but
that's so sad. I'm not
but
that sad about it, I'm not gonna lie.
right. But I always joke about putting it on our DNR list, but it's a song that means so much, and man, if you want to hit a home run with our church, and get them to start that journey or get into that journey, that's one of the songs that we're going to play, no matter how old it is, because it's just going to connect with them. So you have to be aware of all of that.
Yeah, and you use the term DNR list, which like I've used before. I know we've crossed circles obviously, and like that's a term that
Yep.
some of us joke around with. But if you don't know what DNR list is, that's the what is it, Elliot? It's the
Do not resuscitate.
do not resuscitate list, which means these are the songs that we're done with. We're probably not going to pull them back out again.
Yeah.
They just need to be, it's okay to just let them die. Right?
Yeah.
Oh man, that's fantastic.
Yeah, I got that from you.
Uh-oh. I got it from somebody. I don't even remember who I got it from years ago, but we used
Yeah.
to keep the poster actually in my in one of my offices where it's like anytime we'd get tired of a song, it goes on the list. But the other thing to keep in mind with that is that as musicians in the church, we're going to get burned out a whole lot quicker on a song than the congregation is.
Yep.
Right. So like, anytime we do a song, how many times are we doing it before the congregation even hears it the first time? Right. That's probably our 7th time playing it before we've done it once
Yeah.
with the congregation.
Easily.
And then you put in the statistics that I think the general rule of thumb now is like, yeah, a normal attender is going to attend at most twice a month,
Mhm.
typically. So, even if we've done it 10 times, somebody could walk in and never have heard it still.
You're
So
right.
something to keep in mind that, we'll always get burned out before anybody else will. So when it starts to feel tired for us, it doesn't necessarily mean it's tired for the congregation.
Right. Yep.
So yeah, hard perspective to keep though, because
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. So, but yeah, we don't have a list for our DNR, but
Mhm.
we always joke about making sure one of something goes on there. But ultimately, it's always going to be in our planning center, and it's always going to be available to pull out, because it's gonna. There's always that one song that, like you said, we've probably have played it hundreds of times over a year that maybe that one person has never heard, and it's going to be that that it'll help in that journey, as we take that journey in worship. So
Yeah, absolutely. That's good stuff, man. The last piece I want to add into that conversation is, when a song works or whether it doesn't work, sometimes it takes a difference of culture to like, let me rephrase it before I get too off. Let me phrase it this way. If as your worship culture changes, the ability to do certain kinds of songs changes over time as well. So like I remember one of our churches we were at, it's like we did a song once early on when we got there, and our culture wasn't ready to worship to a song like that yet. But then we tried it. It was like 4 or 5 years later. We did the same song, and this is a song that bombed the first time. But then the second time, people loved it, and the difference wasn't necessarily how we did it. The difference was our worship culture had shifted, and that allowed us more creativity and different styles that we could actually pull off. So, like good and bad, and whether a congregation reacts well to a song or not it's subjective to a point, but it's also tied with where the worship culture is a lot of times. Now, that's not to say sometimes there are songs that will just bomb no matter what, with certain congregations, but it's interesting to keep a pulse on how the worship culture changes in your church and what that allows you to do in the future.
yeah, for us, we have a lot of we have a bluegrass Sunday that we do every so often. So our tendency will almost always be towards Southern rock and or rock in general, and
Mhm.
that's what our congregation loves. They tend to that's if we were to play anything and generate a response that we can almost say 100% of the time they're going to get into, that's probably where we're going to land. So We the Kingdom,
I was going to say We the Kingdom. I knew
yeah,
it.
that I mean, like we could probably play their whole entire album and it will probably all hit.
They're
But
going to be at the Phrase coming up this summer, apparently. So, hey.
yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing them. I missed them the last time they were here, but yeah, if we were to do, we've done some Maverick City songs, and from our worship team side of it, it's things that we're like, man, all right, the story I'll tell. It's a beautiful song, and Gyra and I Thank God, like they're all just like these amazing, like great songs that kind of really help and push worship. And the first time we did Gyra, man, you could have probably have heard crickets and nothing. There was
Mhm.
nothing. And it was hard. It was really hard to go through that with our congregation. But then we have been partnering with a local church here in Springfield that that has challenged a lot of what our congregation knows about worship. And so we've done a couple of things with them, and they have really helped us grow, helped our congregation grow. And the next time we did I Thank God, it was like our congregation was all of a sudden, like like you were saying, like it was a different time. We weren't in the right season for it.
Yeah,
And
that's
now
good.
we are. And because they understand what the purpose behind that song, and what the meaning is, and how that affects us as a person and our body and our energy. So
Yeah, I like that word, man. It's the right season, the right song for the right season.
yeah.
And that's just really important to, yeah, to keep in mind and try to keep a pulse on. And that's easier said than done a lot of times. But
Yeah, and you can't force it in there sometimes. No matter how much you think that, and like I said, both my office partner and I, and the work partner, she and I both come from very different backgrounds. She's more gospel, and I'm more of the rock oriented style, and contemporary. And so I'll throw out a song that I like, oh, you, of course you have to know this song. And she's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And same thing for her. And she'll throw out, an Andre Crouch song. And I'm like, I know who he is, but I have
be back.
no idea. And she's like, but this will be so good. And then I'm like, so we always go back and forth, and so we always have to throw it out a little bit to kind of to our congregation, be like, do you know who this is? You know this song? Should we do it? And
Yeah. That's fantastic, man. Yeah. How do we make the church? How do we reflect the culture of our church as opposed to force the church to reflect our culture? Right.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah. Really hard to do as leaders, but man, if you can figure that out, you're doing really well.
Yeah, I don't know if we're doing it really well, but we know there's a wheelhouse for our church, and we've exploited it. So at least and they enjoy it. So, but
Yeah.
every so often, like I said, we kind of use the band jam opportunity, the 5 minute countdown, as an opportunity to kind of just throw out things that we would never normally do, and that's actually been received really well. And so that might be a good way to set up new songs, especially if they're coming from a genre or a style that maybe you're not particularly, your church is not particularly comfortable with, or not, or regularly familiar with. But it's also important to know that it's not about the genre, and that's one of the things that
Yeah.
we're trying to help foster in our church. That kind of culture is that it doesn't really matter what it is, if it puts us on that path into the inner court, into that temple, and put us close and helps that journey, then it really doesn't matter if it's rock, country, southern rock, or rap, or whatever. It's like,
Yeah.
I mean, you got to do it within reason, of course, but you
Sure.
know,
But I think it's an important point though, as we educate and try to educate, not to sound like snooty about it, but I think a lot of music wars and worship wars stuff that we've seen over the last 20, 30, 40 years has really stemmed a lot from expectation, communication, and just I think a lot of miseducation, lack of education on, kind of how what worship music is and what the purpose of it is, right?
yeah,
Because if we're always going into it, and this is just to us as leaders as well, the same way it is to somebody in the congregation, if we are doing things out of our taste and out of our preference all the time, we start focusing on the wrong thing really quickly.
yeah,
Right. It's because it's not about the style. It's about, hey, is this something that we can worship God with a heart full of joy and thankfulness?
yeah,
And if we're doing that, then really at the end of the day, nothing else should matter. But of course,
exactly,
we're human, so things do matter. And no, we want, things that we're nostalgic for. And the same reason, Christmas is the most nostalgic time of the year, right?
right,
It's like we want to
right.
do things the same way we're used to it. We want Christmas to feel like Christmas, right?
Right, yeah, exactly. And that's always been tough for us too, like, especially in our church, they're very traditionalists about their Christmas.
Yeah.
So doing a little drummer boy with like a drum line walking through may not be the best thing.
Yeah,
But
maybe not, maybe not.
yeah,
Or
but it'll be fun.
try it as a band jam, like you said, that's a great tool. I like
Yeah,
that.
right, yeah,
Let's
exactly.
just test the waters just a little bit and see what happens,
Yes,
right?
and if you can do that, even if it takes like just getting that song together, and just getting an iPhone, or like get a little video of it from on Facebook, and just throwing it out to your congregation. like we've done that as well on our Restoration Online page. We've just done little things here and there, and get a cajon, get a guitar, get a something, and just sit out in the lobby. And that's something I've learned from you as well. Like, is just sometimes those little things. One, it helps, you know, if you're trying to generate some content as well. That helps with that. But then that's also another opportunity to share maybe things that you maybe wouldn't be able to normally share with your congregation, and test the waters, see how it goes, how it works, see what the response is, and
Yeah.
go from there.
Well, fantastic, man. That's all great stuff, and there's a lot to go back and listen to again and take some notes from, and a lot of really good strategies and techniques in there for introducing songs to our congregation, for creating a creative culture within our worship teams within our church. So, man, thank you so much for jumping on here and having the conversation with me on a
Yeah,
lovely Wednesday afternoon.
yeah. Thank you so much for having me. And I feel free to reach out to me, guys, if anybody has any questions, or if I need to kind of expound or like expand on anything that maybe I said, or if you have questions about that, I'd love to do whatever I can to help.
Yeah, fantastic, man. Well, hey, just a quick announcement here at the end, just to hopefully bring all of our creative minds together. I think our next worship leader brunch is scheduled for Saturday, March 18th, and that'll be in Centerville. Love to see you guys there so we can have conversations like this in person, you know, sitting at a table and doing this all with one another, because it's all about, for us as leaders, building connection, building community, and making sure that you guys know that we're not in here to do this alone, right? Ministry should never be done alone. We need people around us to learn from, to get wisdom from, and we can all do that for one another. So I hope to see you there. You can sign up for that at www.kingdomcalibrate.com, and it should be right in the events section as you scroll down the page. But aside from that, thanks again, Elliot from Restoration Park Church. Check them out. I think the church is right off 75 in Medway. Is that right?
Yep. 70 and 675.
Sorry, there we go. I'm glad you corrected. 70
Yep.
and 675 in Medway. You guys are doing really cool stuff up there. So can't wait to see what the future holds for you.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Take care, guys.
Yeah, thank you guys. Have a great Wednesday afternoon. Bye.